I apologize for interrupting your helpful conversations, I'm sure. But I am also keenly aware that we are the last stop and the thing that stands between you and lunch. So we will go ahead and get started. Good morning to you all. I've had the pleasure of being able to meet many of you, but for those that haven't, my name is Ange DeWolf King. I'm the Operations and Special Projects Manager at the Commissioner's Office at the Montana University System. As I was typing that out, I thought Montana's a long state. That maybe that's why we have really long titles. But I'm really thankful to be here today and to meet so many of you. Somebody said at the beginning, it's really nice to be back in person, and it's nice to see faces, but it's certainly the energy level that you leave from these type of events and take back to your communities will stay with me as I board my flight and survive the TSA line. So thank you. And I know that this has been somewhat redundant, but I think it's worthwhile as I too want to really thank the WICHE staff. This panel in particular has had some iterations over the last few weeks, and they've been incredibly flexible and helpful. And so I just thanks to your team. And thank you to you all, and thank you to this panel that I'm really looking forward to this discussion. So I don't have to read to you, you know what this session's title is, but the case for colleges is certainly something I think that's on everyone's mind. It is hard to go a day without reading about something regarding higher education's value or challenging higher education's value or perceived value. And I think that the timing of this session within this meeting is perfect. And that's probably a tribute to the WICHE staff. But as I was reflecting this morning on the last 36 hours, I thought, whether I was sitting in a rural education or thinking about developmental ed and placement testing, or just how we work collaboratively, I can't think of how that doesn't fall into the case for college. But the point also of our session is to think about how we can expand that case beyond just us as higher education professionals to really how are we utilizing our students, how are we using their voices and making sure that they feel like a central part of our community, not just in academic offerings, but also in its mission, in how we see our roles and what our futures are. And also to my colleague to my right, how we can lean on and utilize our external partners and our advocates across our communities and our states that are believers in education and how they can help advance our message going forward. So I don't want to take up any more time. The real experts are certainly to my right, but I would welcome our panelists to introduce themselves, maybe share a little bit of information about where their background and maybe why they're on this panel, and then we'll kick off some questions. While this looks formal, but we are certainly hoping that this is a discussion. Somebody was mentioning a happy hour yesterday. This should feel like a cocktail hour discussion for sure. And we hope that it becomes that. So thank you. Scott, do you want to lead?
Certainly. Good afternoon, right? 11:10 is it? That's okay. Good afternoon. Okay. My name is Scott Eichner. I am the Rehabilitation Programs Chief for the Department of Corrections in Montana. Basically, I have everything that's not public safety or security. Prior to that, I've been with the department about 6 months. Prior to that, I spent about 26 years doing workforce development in both Texas and Montana. And so that's really more my perspective when this panel had come together. This was before, in the beginning, before COVID, and I was still working with Department of Labor, and it all made sense. And I have some of that now in corrections. I also have the rehabilitation and reentry stuff that goes on, which is huge these days, right? We have a labor pool that everybody seems to want. They can figure out a way to touch it. So still some perspective in that, but our higher ed folks in Montana have been great partners. And you got to have the right people, man. You guys know this better than anybody. You're living it. You got to have the right people. If you don't have the right people, it doesn't work. And we've been lucky that we've had the right people, done some cool stuff. And so we come to talk about that. Thank you.
I'm Satine Stone. I'm the Student Government Association president for Front Range Community College in Boulder, Boulder campus. And I am 42 years old. I just started first semester, first year of college. I haven't been to college in 25 years. Thank you. I'm hoping to get a PhD in psychology to help others with developmental trauma and to help the community, as you probably have seen in the bio. A lot of background. I've got a lot of background. I have developmental trauma, and I went to school, 25 years ago, but I didn't have support. Higher education just seemed like so unattainable, and with no support, like I got there, but I didn't have anyone to tell me how to school or how to make a living. And I didn't get a degree. I just took 5 years of school and credits. And then life happened. COVID happened. I was a professional in a different career. COVID happened. And I just was like, you know what? Now's the time. I'm watching everyone on social media. Just everyone's having a really hard time. There's a shortage of psychologists out there. I'm watching, and the thing that I saw that was consistent was the lack of education. So maybe other people went to school 20, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, plus 10 years ago. But right now, I feel that people need to get re-educated. And the things that I'm learning just in this semester, in the last 2 months, I feel I've been living in ignorance, and I'm very, very grateful to be going back to school. And I would love to share that with more people.
Got back to follow. And everyone's tired of hearing from me at this point, I'm sure. I'm Jeffrey Alexander. I'm Vice President of Academic Affairs at Truckee Meadows Community College in Reno, Nevada. And today's Nevada Day, as you know, so feel free to set your away messages in observation, in observance of Nevada Day. I'll not be taking emails at this time. Please go right ahead. I'm here to accompany these panelists and to talk about the COVID adjacent world in colleges and how we're trying to get resituated and how we are looking to do things a little differently now, perhaps, and work with our partners and work with our students and faculty and staff, because that is a challenge that I can share some of the challenges that we have faced and hopefully at least partially overcome in recent months as we've tried to navigate this sort of mid to late to hopefully one day post-pandemic world.
Thank you all. Thank you. So I will kickstart the questions, but if as we go forward, if there's a question that you really want to ask, please raise your hand and jump in. By no means is this meant like we have to go through our 7 and then you can have your turn. So please jump in, but we'll just kick things off. And I'll start with Satine. And you mentioned that you're coming back after a really long time. And I guess I would love for you to just expand a little bit more about how you felt, coming back, or what led you to taking the leap just to maybe get online and then submit an application. And then we'll loop in our academic partners as well. But if you wouldn't mind just kicking us off there.
I was so scared, like really, really scared. I'm in my 40s. So, am I going to be taken seriously? What is getting educated look like now? What is an online class? I love people. I'm such a people person. I can't actually go to any of the classes that are in person. I'm taking remote classes or online classes. How do I even sign up for that? Can I make these appointments with the advisors? Where's the campus? How do I navigate the website? Oh, wait, there's this website, but there's also that website. Wait, but do they link? How do I get my student ID? Student ID, student discounts, but I can't get a student discount because it's at a community college and ours doesn't have dates on them. So there's it was really, I can feel it, and it was really scary. But I knew, I just was like, if I want a PhD by the time I'm 50 or 55, I'm not sure, but I'm going to need to start right now. So it was time. I knew I had a very short amount of time to do this, but also because of my life experience, I was able to remember that if you just dedicate yourself, you can get to where you want to go. And there's no time like right now to do the thing you want to do. And, psychology, I've read all the books, I've watched all the YouTube videos and the TED Talks, and there's so much misinformation out there that I was like, the only way I'm gonna like get real information and then get qualified to help other people is by going to school. So I just did it. And my husband was like, what are you doing? I was like, I have to do this. I had a really good career, but I just need to go in this direction now. I feel it in my heart and I got to follow my heart.
Yeah, I heard somebody say, yay. And I like, without being like emo or something, but like that gives me chills. And we were chatting in the hallway and you mentioned this story, and Scott and I were reflecting on how, that takes so much courage to be able to have those kinds of conversations, not only with yourself, but with a campus. And I think everybody in this room applauds you for that. And so I'll turn the script a little bit to Scott and to Jeff, but when we think about adult learners or welcoming back people that have taken a break, whether that's a 1 semester break or a 25-year break, what strategies have you all seen to work, or advice you may have for folks who are looking to expand connections in that space? Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Certainly. So I guess the first thing that I would say that I say at all these is that education is absolutely part of the workforce development system in this country. And workforce development is a team sport. End of story. You can't do it on your own. Don't think you can. And if you work with people that think that's what they're trying to do, you're going to have problems. You can't do it. It's a team sport. It takes all of us, right? So one of the things that we did before the pandemic that we had a lot of success of, and if I'm being completely honest, the pandemic killed it, right? I mean, it's not dead, but it's almost dead. And we have to be very deliberate in going back and going through pretty much the same motions that we did to stand it up the first time, but there's opportunity in it. From my perspective, like I said, I did workforce development for about 26 years. A lot of that, I'm one that believes that industry is the primary piece of that rather than labor. And so I will speak to it from that side because industry is the one that's paying for it, right? The unemployment system and the public workforce system, and it's employer tax dollars that are funding all that. So when we were thinking about this in 2018 with higher ed, we were trying to figure out, nobody's coming into public workforce center offices anymore. They're just not, right? And so the business model is changing. Well, how do we go out and find them? Well, there's all kinds of things we could do, but it's not really effective. It's just kind of cold calling. And so there had been a study by Eli Lilly that said there are 125,000 people in the state that had some college, no degree, right? And you guys have probably all done some program related to something like this. We took that as an opportunity, thought, oh, here's an audience that we could reach out to. One of the ways that we approached it that I think was a little bit different than what we had heard, at least at that time, or what we had learned from other states that had done stuff, was we pitched it as an employment program, not an education program. You're not coming back to college. You're coming back to this place to get some skills or some education or some certificates that will get you a job. And then the other thing that we brought to the table was a connection to industry. And we developed, and I have a copy of it. I'm happy also to share it with you guys for whatever it's worth. We developed a thing of roles and responsibilities that everybody had to sign when they participated. So the college did, the local workforce system did, and the employer did. And all of this talks about the fact that this is not an education program. Yeah, they're getting education, but that's a byproduct. And they're going to the college to get it, but that's a byproduct. The end goal is the job. And when we call these folks, we took the list and we broke it down, right? And you continue to stratify it down. We took Missoula as the first place, Missoula College, the 2-year school there, and then the University of Montana are both there, were willing partners, helped us out. We got down to about 2,500 people in the last 5 years that had started, that had less than 30 credits, that were in a 100-mile radius. Broke that down even further, and we had about 100 that were in nursing that had declared that they wanted nursing, had less than 15 hours. We had about 96 that wanted computer programming, less than 15 hours. Stratified some of that. And then we had people call. We had our staff, workforce center staff, call those folks and ask them, what are you doing? Do you seem to have a dream at one time? Are you interested in this dream? And talk to them about what that was. If they were, then we set them up with a college, and they came in and they talked to the admissions staff, but in a different way than what the normal admissions conversation is, right? Because these are folks that were scared off, right? That something happened in life and they didn't come back, and they might have outstanding fines, and there are all kinds of hurdles, and it's not the same conversation. And it was a very different conversation. We also embedded staff at the University of Montana and Missoula College, workforce staff, who the college was gracious enough to train and give us access to their systems and let us help do some of that hand holding that needed to happen because everybody's busy, right? And then the other thing that the Workforce Center did is we have through WIOA, which you're probably all familiar with, there's something called set aside funds, governor set aside funds, 15%. All states have it. They have the authority to use that for training for whatever they want. That doesn't require the same WIOA eligibility requirements. Your state has it, whether or not it's available, whether or not it's not already spoken for is something else you'd have to figure out. But we took some of that and we dedicated it to cover the cost of training and support services for these folks, because a lot of them just like this are living life, right? That they can't just quit their job and go back to work. It doesn't work that way. So we had to find money. So FAFSA and all those other things are great, but a lot of those folks didn't qualify for that. They're working, they're not in great jobs, but we dedicated money to that. And then we had about 40 people that had gone through the program, either completed or in transit of the program when the pandemic hit. But all of those had a job waiting for them, right? There was part of this connection piece, this employer signing up was, if we agreed to kind of sponsor you. If we kept going, we wanted to get to the point where maybe they'd even scholarship them, right? If you could show value, you could scholarship them, but they had employers would sign up, talk to these folks in advance and say, yeah, I'm willing to take Kay. If she completes this course successfully, I'll give her a shot. And then so they knew they had a job coming out. At the point that they get hired and they work 6 months, there was more federal training dollars there. There's incumbent worker training dollars that could pay for ongoing education with those folks at those same schools, right? And so you begin to build this pipeline, but it was trying to be proactive. It was trying to find something that would resonate with people. It's not just, hey, wouldn't you like to get education? It was an employment program. And that was a hard sell at first. You talk about good partners. That was one of the things that we struggled with, and not just with higher ed, with our folks too, right? That we look at and go, well, no, they're going to college. No, forget that. That's not the point of this. That's the pathway. That's the mechanism to get them there. And it was a tough sell, but once we finally got everybody there, it was great, man. Pandemic hit, killed it. And now we're back in the, back where we were. The other thing that I know I'm rambling. The other thing that we spent a lot of time focusing on, particularly during the pandemic, was trying to figure out how you take the apprenticeship model. So Department of Labor, right? Workforce side perspective. How do you take the apprenticeship model and leverage that to any occupation? Maybe not in the same level of formality that an apprenticeship takes hold, but the concept of that, right? It is building somebody, right? And that's what it is, right? It's building people. How do you take that and you overlay that into jobs so that when people come in, that's the expectation. And now it's not the responsibility of the individual who might have opportunities through their employer to progress and get more skills and move up the chain, but it's largely driven off of their motivation and ability to do that and flip that and make that something that the employer offers when people come in. So then it's up to the individual to turn it down. Right? How do you build it in like that? And those are little different looking career pathways. We actually had started working on one in Helena with Helena College to do something around CNAs, that they hire CNAs, and in 6 months, if they finish that, then they would increase the wage to whatever the next level was. They would send that person to college and they would figure out how to manage that workforce while that person was doing it, right? But that was offered and the individual had to come back and say, no, I don't want to do that. It's a very different way to recruit. It's a much more meaningful way for people who are looking for some assurance that they're going to have opportunities to move up the career ladder or the salary ladder, if we're being honest. But it also engages education at every single step of that, right? And so then the crux of all of everything that I have said is, again, it's a team sport and everybody's got to be at that table. Education is a huge piece of that, particularly the 2-year system, in helping industry understand what the training pieces are and understand from industry how you could create something that matters to the way that business works, and then institute that, create that, right? So that it works for them. Maybe it's a sector partnership thing that works for a number of businesses in that same type of deal. It's tough, but those things matter. And in today's world, they resonate. It includes education every place. So we're creating more people that are better skilled, better educated. It benefits the industry because they're getting needs. They're starting to get a way to fill their needs to address this weird labor force shortage that nobody understands and probably will for a couple of years. There's a lot of energy in something like that.
I have a question, actually. So that sounds great for like someone, in their early 20s, right? But what about people with experience in their 30s or 40s or 50s that are going back to school and also need that help, say, make, a decent living? Would they, like, does that support count for the wage that they make that is more than someone in their 20s?
It could. I mean, the example, like the thing we did in Missoula, we did people with less than 15 credit hours, right? So yeah, most of them were young. Most of them were working entry-level jobs. Something had happened. Most of it was financially related, but you could do that with anything, right? And you could look and you could stratify it. You could split it by other factors. You could look at age of the individual, because we have that. I mean, you guys captured that information, right? We have that. We know how they are. You could split it by demographics, how much they're making in the moment. You could split it by all kinds of stuff and run different types of programs. We had happened to choose to do it that one way. We had aspirations to begin to do it a bunch of different ways. And like I said, the pandemic slowed that down. We can't, the one thing, we're being honest, you can't do it for everybody, right? Because we don't have the money or the funds to do that. But again, we're not trying to solve it for everybody, right? We called 100 people for nurses. We got 10 of them. That was a win. That was 10 more that we had in the pipeline than we had gathered any other way. And people that were interested in doing it, that were probably going to stick with it, rather than people we said, oh, wouldn't you like to do them? And oh, yeah, that kind of be cool, right? It's much more engaging. And so whatever way that you want to split, you want to stratify that makes sense for you, makes sense for whatever your target demand occupations are in your area and your demographic, your employer base. And that's all the type of stuff you got to figure out, but you could do it for anything.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd like to take us in a couple of different directions and talk about some of the themes that colleges have wrestled with when we're trying to get back to business. As many of us have struggled in one manner or another to try to get the train back on the tracks and get some speed up, because we've faced a host of different obstacles along the way. For example, staffing, salaries, right? The question of online versus in person, and who will teach what, and so forth. Some of those have been challenges, and also the challenge of reaching out to employers and trying to get them on board, which is very similar to the conversation that we've been having. So when it comes, first of all, to getting back to any sense of normalcy, we had to wrestle with the concept of remote work, right? Remote work came to town. And I think many of us discovered that our policies or our contracts with union faculty or contracts with others didn't always bother in the before times to specify that when you're at work, you're physically in your body at your workplace. Remember how this was implied. This was implied, and it wasn't explicit. And so when people went home and taught online and discovered that they're still working remotely, you didn't have a hammer to bring them back, right? You didn't have any means of requiring people to come and teach in person. And we have colleges in Nevada, one or two, that are struggling to get anybody to return. Faculty in some cases do not want to return. Large numbers of them in some cases don't want to come back. And then that erodes the kind of quality that Mike Carty was speaking about, where you will have people present and you will be able to look after and support and actually provide for students, show them that you're there, show them that you're present, have your door open, be ready there and able to serve them. That's been a challenge. If you could raise your hand if your college is offering 50% or more fully in person. That's good numbers, right? Who's more than half online? Or anything else other than fully in person? Okay, encouraging. We've got some colleges, I checked it, just what I could see, non-scientific poll, but based on some of the data dashboards around the country, there are some colleges with as few as 15% fully in person, and the bulk of it is online and moved there and stayed there. And that's really a big question mark for how people are going to proceed going forward. We think we've got it dialed in reasonably well, where we're listening to what students want, because we have a lot of transfer programs and a lot of arenas in which they can do online instruction, but that's still a challenge. It also means what to do with employees. What is remote work? How much remote work is okay? What kind of remote work agreement do you have with your supervisor? There's the at-need kind, because the furnace is broken and someone has to work remotely because they have the technology. And we did for so long and showed that it was possible. And then there's the more extended kind, where somebody wants to work more remotely, and maybe that's not something we want to support, but we have a process just in case. And so there was a lot of wrestling back and forth with that. You probably had similar experiences. We also face the challenge of the employers wanting the training at their house now. right? We live in a DoorDash economy, right? Remember everyone's having their groceries delivered, right? And you're bleaching your groceries in your kitchen and making sure that they're all safe and everything. Remember that? Well, when you did that, you learned that almost anything can be delivered, right? The various places around the country, they went by different names, but some of these companies that popped up would deliver almost anything to you. And that's what the employers want now. Before the pandemic, we had these open entry labs. Remember? There was open entry, open exit, early exit, easy to disappear, right? Hard to keep them in the class sometimes. But when the pandemic struck and thereafter, they decided they didn't want to come to your house anymore. That's time, that's money, that's transportation cost. We want you to bring the training to us. And so we have. And that's meant a lot of legwork, a lot of grant, work in order to obtain the materials and the curriculum and the instructors necessary to go out there and do that work for some of our workforce partners, which are in some cases very large employers, and they want to train a great many apprentices. And so we have grant programs designed to provide for that kind of instruction, to provide for the registration fees. We don't use the word tuition in Nevada. It's some sort of a phobia. The registration fees, and also pay the instructor's salary, right? And maybe some combination thereof. So that meant that employers could benefit three different ways in some cases: getting the curriculum, getting the instruction, and having the reg fees paid. That's a big deal to them, right? And now it's at their house. That's a quadruple win. How are you going to get them back on the campus, right? That's changed fundamentally. And so we will expect to be doing much more of that and trying to obtain the grants necessary to continue to provide that. So something perhaps for your radar to see coming your way if you work with employers of any scale who have a lot of employees whom they wish to train and upskill. And lots of different flavors of that. There's, the Tesla Start program for manufacturing, but also there's one for quality, but also there's one for onboarding 18-year-olds who come out of high school. And, there's a variety of different flavors of that. Panasonic is another partner we work with, and we have grant programs scaled up to deliver for them, right, in this new normal, if you will. And that means for them, normal is at our house, and they obtained a new site and they're leasing a new building in Reno, and that's a big deal. They were just named the employer of the year by one of the local economic development associations for the large employer category. They're doing all kinds of good things to invest in their people. And it's a fantastic partnership. And the governor's office of economic development is providing monies to help support that training, which is excellent. But then we have to find the people, and that's been super hard, as you know, to get folks who have that kind of skill set and to get them to go out to these companies and to not have the companies poach them. That's really hard. That happened more than a few times. And we had to have these conversations with them and say, look, this program cannot survive if you continue to poach the people away. And that was a 9-month hiatus when they stole away one of the directors in our program, right? And so they started to wake up to the fact that we need to work together and they need to partner with us. And they can't just, absorb what it is we have in terms of talent, because then the program runs aground. I'll move on briefly to talk about construction trades. Nevada has a great many strong unions, construction trades unions. They're very public and wear their colors in public and the whole deal, right? So it's a very pro-union state in lots of regards, and the government has long provided funding to help them through a GCAP grant, they call it, to pay for the reg fees to obtain a stacked credential toward all the way to an associate degree. And so a skill cert leading to a certificate of achievement leading to the associate degree. And that's something that we completely rebuilt for them in the last several months, because it had sort of moldered and it needed to be refreshed. And we did that work together with 8 different unions in order to provide that training, once again, at their house, this time with their instructors, but they are basically seconded to us by virtue of the learning outcomes that we teach. And we can embed many of the gen ed learning outcomes in the courses and so forth. And then they handle the trade content, and we handle some of the additional gen ed content where necessary. And so with that also comes new team members. And so we've realized that this taking it out to their place means we have to provide the team members who are ready to go out into the community. So we've hired a new workforce development director, a new CTE programs specialist, and these folks will be going out into the community to develop those relationships and to cultivate relationships with employers and to build the new kinds of awards, the skill certs and so forth necessary, as Mike talked about, once again, to meet their needs and demonstrate that we can train your people to do what it is you need them to do and the skill sets they need at your workplace and so forth, and that they will need for advancement with your organization. And so that requires a lot of listening, that requires some menus. It's almost like the a la carte menu at the all-you-can-eat sushi place, right? The one where you check the boxes, right? Which skill sets do you want? We can build these micro credentials. We can stack them together. We can put them into different formats and shapes and sizes and different durations, and we can deliver that for you in all sorts of different ways. And finally, the CTE programs person needs to really capitalize on the CTE training taking place at the high schools. Dual credit, sadly, comes in too many flavors. And I think you probably experienced this too. We have a branding issue versus AP, right? Advanced placement has one name, it's AP. They even have a TV show called AP, right? We don't have that. We have concurrent enrollment, concurrent education, dual credit, dual enrollment, jumpstart, early credit, name yours, right? Right? Running start, all kinds of names, right? We have a branding issue. Families don't understand what that is. Schools don't understand what that is. Well, no, but concurrent enrollment's the one at the high school with the high school teacher, but the dual credit's the one at the college with the college teacher, right? They don't care, right? Make it clearer is the message I'm trying to bring, because we need to be able to compete with something that's as coherent as AP and has the cachet that AP does, and PS pays the stipend and provides the junket to Florida to grade the papers every summer, right? We don't have that. And so we're working on that. And so as a system, we're trying to come up with the kinds of incentives that will bring those teachers aboard and help them to deliver that pipeline to us. Because for a long time, it was an articulated credit model where you just take the high school class and here's a coupon and maybe come see us someday and we'll give you credit for prior learning. Well, I'm not getting any credit hours for that, right? And no revenue besides. So we need to fix that model too. Once again, take it to their house. So we're having to diversify and reach out into the community in all these ways with instructors, with recruiters, with the kinds of people who are developing these relationships to build those pipelines and to showcase those awards. And we need better materials and we need better web materials. And we're starting to wrestle with all of those kinds of phenomena because the campus is far away. And in a digital environment where you could do it from home, you could just as easily do it from your workplace, and they expect you to show up and deliver. And so that's what we're wrestling with.
Thank you. There's always a little delay. Thank you. There's a lot to unpack here. I think one theme that keeps coming to mind is like these are people powered. Somebody said that yesterday too. And we need people who are available and present to help guide students, guide folks that are working with employers, guide people who are just going out into the community to deliver the right messaging, it sounds like. And coming back to Scott, what you said earlier about our campuses with job service, being able to merge some of our partnership there so that our campuses, right, like all of you, struggle to fill a lot of staff jobs. Job service was struggling to fill some of their positions. If we can merge them together, it presents again, a person who's educated and present, available to talk to students in a way that doesn't require them driving from building to building. They're all integrated into one location, which I think so much of this really relies on. So I'm just pivoting a little bit on that thought of presence and change, because I keep coming back to your comment, Satine, at the beginning about you just needed some people to be there for you. And I think moving out of virtual, hopefully, and having the ability to connect in person in a present way and an intentional way will be an important piece for a lot of students. And on that same thread, I guess, this is sort of a big, broad question, but I'm interested what other changes that maybe were part of the pandemic that you have liked and hope stay, or if there are other changes that you think we should be looking at.
Oh, wow. I really like the remote classes and the online classes. Those are really cool. The remote classes actually feel like I'm in a class. So we've got the teacher, and I've got two of them. They're actually two different classes. One's English, one's psychology. The psychology class, cameras are mandatory. Everyone has their voice on mute until it's time to participate. English class, very good class, but cameras are not mandatory. And I have seen the drop rate, right? When class first starts, it's like 30 kids or 25. And it's what, week 8 now? And we've got like 6 in one class and like 12 in another class. So that's really significant. But what I noticed was the involvement was different between mandatory cameras, because then the teacher, I mean, I go to therapy, right? And I do virtual therapy. Being able to see the responses in the kids is so important. It's that connection. When in English class, we don't see, and there's no response. The teacher is guessing, hey, is this, do you guys get what I'm saying? And it almost like burns time by asking that and then waiting. And then maybe one person puts in chat, yes, and then, oh, okay, good, move on. So that I think is significant. That ability to engage them and see the visual response, because sometimes it's in between the things that they say and what they don't say, right? The teacher can say, wow, this person hasn't said anything in, 3 classes. Maybe I need to reach out to them. And it's that nuance that's going to keep people there. Now, the online class, that's different. One of the teachers started doing videos, 5 to 10 minute videos reviewing what we're supposed to be reading. And all of a sudden in the discussion board, people started having conversations. Whereas the other one, the only conversations that are happening are the mandatory 200 words response to this. And just being able to watch that and watch it over time, I don't know how the teachers feel about it, but I know what I see, and that engagement is significant.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have any comments about that, or how you're working with faculty?
Sure do. Thank you for sharing that. That's exactly what everyone suspects is true. When the cameras are off, it's very difficult to have that dialogue. It's difficult to be engaged. It's difficult to assess student learning comprehension, the instructors, responses and so forth. All of that, I think, is intuitive, and it is borne out in what you're saying and in the survey responses and the kinds of student feedback we hear. At the same time, we want to respect some of the challenges that folks might face when it comes to connectivity. Maybe they don't have the bandwidth to support the video, right? Maybe they can only support the audio, or maybe it's just that day. Remember, certain neighborhoods were downstream and they couldn't get as much, good bandwidth at certain times of day. Recall that people were all at home, and K to 12, they would come online, and then everyone's bandwidth would suffer because, there were some neighborhoods that really faced this. And so we respected that. We also respected the situation that a person might be living in. Maybe it was a chaotic background. Maybe there were challenges. They might be on headphones and there's all kinds of things happening in the background. They have a computer in a common space perhaps, and that was a concern. And some folks just felt that it was more invasive to be seeing me and my family and my grandma and my dog and all these other things. So we wanted to be respectful of that. But you're right about the breakdown that occurs in communication and in learning and in that exchange. And so that's why we want to promote, of course, in-person learning. Our president is adamant that face-to-face online, and not only for the college community, but for the future of the college, it depends heavily on that in-person presence, right, versus online. And she recognizes fully that it plays an important part, and most students have both, and they supplement a schedule with an online class together with some in-person classes. And then in the CTE arenas, very often it's a moot point because they're so often hands-on and in-person and so on. But it's just that vitality of campus extends beyond the classroom into other corners of the college too, right? Custodial staff, cafeteria staff, the kinds of folks who might be doing those sorts of jobs, who rely on that campus population to really have employment and to have significant number of people to serve and buildings to take care of and so forth. There's a lot of different classifications of employees who are dependent upon that. And so we want to maximize that opportunity while still providing flexibility for students. But in that online space, in that exchange, it's tough to find a mandate. It's tough to try to institute any kind of hard and fast rule about this. We leave it up to instructors very often, and we respect some of those concerns that students might have.
Thanks. I think one thing I'll sort of move to before we oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please do.
Mike Carney, Lake Area Tech. My question is, have you voiced your concerns to your instructor, to the school? Because there's better ways to do online. That was my reaction to what you were saying. And I was just wondering if you've passed that feedback up so that they can improve their online environment.
I'm gathering information right now. But yeah, I really want to, and be sensitive to what are some of the teachers' issues. Like sometimes there's bandwidth. Maybe there's children, like the teachers have children too. So, their children are running around in the class where it's mandatory, the video is mandatory. Sometimes last night's class, someone had low bandwidth and the teacher said, it's okay. It's okay. This is an exception. Go ahead and turn your camera off so you can hear us. So there's an understanding. And the great thing about Zoom is you can blur backgrounds. But, if you think about it, right now, there's all these external things. So there's Zoom or there's Skype or there's other apps. People use Twitter. People use Instagram. They use TikTok. They make videos. If they can make videos and post them, they can get online. And so it's like, and to me, it seems that there's a solution somewhere, but getting everyone to figure out what that solution is really hard. So the answer is, yeah, I want to bring it all. I want to do a town hall meeting. That's my plan when I get back. The one thing so in SGA, we have conversations every Monday, and we found that there's not just student stress from doing homework and having to work, 20 to 40 hours a week or more, but then there's a faculty stress, and then there's administration stress, and communication between the three, I call it my triangle, is really hard because getting to fit all that in. And so like, I haven't met the president yet. I have talked to one administrator, and even the person who's facilitating, she's doing her best and she's taking on the job of two people. And what I noticed was there's come up with ideas, and then there's, yeah, but okay, so that idea is a good idea, but we don't actually have the money or the time. And so there's that. My psychology teacher, I don't want to call him out by name, he's amazing. And he has fought for the students. And we do talk about that even in class. And he's gotten a lot of pushback too. A lot of, well, change is hard or change costs money. But I agree with you. And because of this conversation, I feel more confident to have that conversation. So thank you guys.
Before we jump in, are there other questions?
First, Satine, we have a word for you in higher ed. It's called non-traditional, and you're unconventionally non-traditional. So,
Thank you.
So I don't know what sort of sample size you represent, but I am curious about something. And this goes to what you were saying, Jeff, that it's really interesting to see what's happened with the desired methodology, COVID adjacent, post-pandemic, whatever you want to call it. And I spent a couple of days looking at our data, and they vary pretty dramatically by discipline. And one of the things we noticed was math in particular. Students, at least in our college, don't like math online, and they've sort of been waiting for the opportunity to take it face to face. But in other disciplines, we've had what was probably 25% online before is now well over 50% by discipline, not by institution. But where we appear to see the greatest interest by students and faculty is hybrid, not high flex, not synchronous, but hybrid. And if this isn't too personal a question, because I don't know your circumstances, how would hybrid work for you?
Oh man, I wish I was taking in-person classes. I know through psychology, the benefit of being next to another human being, as we're finding out here. I work 40 hours plus a week, so I can only take night classes. One of my classes is a Westminster class online. That's the remote one. Another one, the psychology one, is a Larimer class. So I can't even get there. The other ones, they just happen to be online, so I can do them on my own time. But I wish there were more night classes, like after 5 p.m., 5:30 to 9 p.m. That would be my happiness. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the other students, so I'm unconventional. I saw that there is this issue with connection. So I started a homework group with two other girls who raised their hand when the teacher said, "Who's the A chaser?" And we all raised our hand and we're like, okay.
Mhm.
But we started a homework group and they can only take 2 classes each. And because of the lack of availability of night classes.
Satine, I want to applaud you for bringing forth your concerns and actually giving us a lot of information we can take back to our campuses. My name is Jacqueline Gators Jordan, and I'm the Vice President for Instructional Services at Pikes Peak State College in Colorado Springs. And so as I'm listening to you and what you shared, and I totally agree, when I taught English, and if I were teaching English, I would be one of those instructors that's like, keep your cameras on, but I know for a variety of reasons, we respect not having the cameras on for all of the reasons that were shared. But I think that what I will walk away from this conversation, and largely based on what you've shared, is that as we look at developing our college in this COVID adjacent world, we're coming out of something that we didn't anticipate, that we weren't expecting. And now we're going into something that we can't anticipate and we weren't expecting. And so your voice and other students' voices will be key and paramount to us being successful as we move forward. I think we haven't listened to our students enough because we do have some realities, right? So there are budgetary and financial realities. But if we're not producing a product that our customers want, then what are we doing it for, right? And so I know we've offered courses in the evening at the times that we thought we should offer them or in the way that we thought we should, but we really should be listening to those students that we want to attract to those courses and build them in a way, at a time, at a campus and a location that we can encourage the enrollment there. So thank you. What you shared has been more informative for me than many of the focus groups and talk sessions that I've had with other colleagues at my college versus speaking directly to the students. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much.
point.
One of the things is being at the school. So I have to log in 5 hours a week just to be there for SGA. And sure, I'm doing homework or I'm doing work, but I'm watching the kids that circle the pantry. I'm watching the kids that used to stop and hang out because it's a big window that we have there. They used to stop and talk. Now their heads are down. They're holding their bags tight. I'm an illustrator. I do a lot of like character illustration. So I'm a people watcher and I love psychology. So as the weeks have gone by, I'm watching the closed offness, the stress, just the mannerisms. They say so much. And I don't see people walking up to them. I don't see people asking them questions, but by being present, and that's just the people that are at the college, right? So, yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking for hands. I don't want to interrupt this really great conversation. To me, one thing that's really standing out is that community that a student feels is really critical. Excuse me. And I guess I would ask each of you, how you think, based on where your sector fits with higher ed's overall shape, how we can strengthen those communities for our other partners, whether that be industry, whether that be around student support, student needs, student focuses, whether that be around faculty. So it's again a broad question, but we're learning a lot. So
Go ahead.
No, take it away.
Oh, I'm not sure I have much to offer, so.
Well, I think going forward, we're looking at, we're trying to stay nimble, first and foremost. We're trying to listen to what it is students want. Thank you for sharing these thoughts. And we too are listening to students at the college. We work closely with SGA. I made a point to go to their first meeting and to be present and to introduce myself and say hello. And they're like, who's this weirdo? And why is he coming into our room? And I don't know what's going on, but I wanted to let them know that we appreciate them running for student government. I saw them when they were giving campaign, speeches, and there were stump speeches and so forth. And they had a day to get, give donuts out to the students if they went and listened to at least 5 of the candidates, right? and they got a donut and so it was very successful. So it's a way to encourage that kind of interaction. And then from there, I wanted to see them through to, actually being seated and thank them. We provided actually some technology to SGA as well. So the members each received an iPad that we managed to purchase with some capacity and HERE funding. And that was a way to try to integrate themes of OER and also digital literacy and so forth, and have them be leaders in that effort. I think cost remains a big issue. And we're looking at trying to reduce the cost for materials sensibly with faculty support, with faculty buy-in. The OER campaign that we've launched this past summer was very successful. Had 50 faculty take part in that. And almost all of them found good quality resources that they agreed to sew into their courses. So over the course of the next 3 semesters, those courses will set sail and new materials will be used. In order to bring costs down, the students of tomorrow won't know how much they saved as a result, right? And their predecessors, fortunately, will have higher costs, but we're hopeful that that expands in time and that we get, more mileage for students out of the dollars that they have to spend. When it comes to dollars, we're also very mindful that salaries are a big problem for us right now, and they are for many of you as well. There are some areas where we haven't seen a job applicant in 6 or 8 months, and that's specifically nursing, computer science, programming. These kinds of areas are deeply challenged. These folks are not sitting at home on their sofas, right? The people with these skill sets are working. Traveling nurses are earning twice as much or more than they could earn with us. And so the students who graduate from the program wind up earning a great deal more than their instructors on day one. And so how do we invert that? How do we get that back? We've had summits across the state with state leaders, healthcare leaders, legislators, donors, and so forth to try to talk about this problem. But we could dance around the problem all day long. It really comes down to salaries. It really comes down to what we can afford. But if we start paying certain kinds of instructors great deal more, that we create terrible inequity across the college. And you know what sort of ripples that produces in less well-paid disciplines that historically do not fetch as much in the private sector and cannot support those kinds of wages, those kinds of salaries on the faculty. So many shoals yet to navigate for sure.
I'm gonna go on after you.
Not being from that world, I don't know that I have much to offer. I guess one thing I would say is, from the aspect of partnership, I think I will speak for the entire country. I think the public workforce system as a whole is struggling to understand what its mission and audience and value to the equation is. They've been working off the same business model for about 90 years, and it's largely reactive and largely disconnected from the things that matter, right? I mean, we tie things to in-demand occupations and industry needs, but there's no measurement in the public workforce system that forces measurement on industry, on that type of industry engagement, that type of stuff. So we're struggling to figure that out. We are a willing partner though. And so to the extent that we could help, on like staff shortages as an example, and helping with doing some of this stuff with employer engagement and group and facilitation and reaching out to potential job seeker bases, reach out. If you haven't already, reach out to your public workforce partners and get them to come to your facilities and do that. They're trying to find an identity. It's not to come and do your work for you. It's to the end goal is, again, is employment, right? But if you can figure out how, like y'all were talking about, how to offer courses in a way that speak to what the individuals who are going to take those courses, what meets their needs, and those opportunities that meet their needs end up in a job or a better job. That's our contribution to that. And however we can help manage the people and the processes around that to ensure that somebody gets to employment and ensure that a job gets filled, that's value for the public workforce system. That's really all the justification you need to get people to come in and help make phone calls and help be additional resource to shepherd students. Particularly the non-traditional folks. I don't like the word. I like the other word. I can't remember what it was. So what was the other word?
Unconventional.
Unconventional.
Also
Thank you.
good.
I like that a lot. they can be a resource there to help you out, right? They can add bandwidth to your ability, to your volume to be able to get stuff done. I would encourage you, absolutely reach out and ask those questions. And again, the case to make is figure out how it connects to filling a job and getting somebody in a job, and you just conquered the world.
Yeah, I can certainly honor that. I agree. And I think another challenge we face is convincing legislators, as you know, of the value of higher ed and funding it appropriately. And we face significant, headwinds in that regard. We hear about, well, the need to fund colleges to, benefit workforce development, and we get blank stares and questions like, but isn't the unemployment rate 2%? I mean, who needs help here? Right. And then the employers will say, but we need staff, we need people, we're trying to recruit, and we're trying to recruit trained people. Okay, and that starts to land and make some sense. But as we all know, over the last 15, 20 years, the silver bullet for balancing state budgets was to cut higher ed, right? And to go from funding 70% of the cost to more like 30% of the cost or less, sometimes zero, and letting families and students pay for that themselves. And that's very challenging. We have a question up front here. The other piece about that that's so difficult is that when the example that I mentioned of a company that's getting that much grease, right? That's getting that much support in the form of reg fees, instruction, curriculum delivered to them. At some point, we have to ask, what part of that is not corporate welfare? How much of that is corporate welfare when it comes from a state grant? And they're getting all of that training for free. Right. And then at the same time, the budget for the institution providing it gets cut. Now, COVID was a bummer, right? When the casinos closed down, you can imagine what it did to our state budget, right? Biggest state budget cut in America, 12% right off the top, and facing more coming down the pike, perhaps. So that's a big challenge for us. But we have to be pretty clear-eyed about that. If they're getting it all for free, and then their effective corporate tax rate is 0 or thereabouts, how is that providing for the system, right? The engine needs fuel and it needs to exhaust, right? It needs that intake, and we need the funding to provide. And so where we see we are hard pressed to bring aboard the people with the training necessary to deliver that kind of caliber of instruction because we lack the budget, at some point, the private sector folks, and I'm on the Nevada Workforce Board, very recently seated, and I'd be happy to explain this to them, that if they do not provide for education, then they will run aground because the system and the engine will run dry.
Yeah, Jeffrey, you're right. The making that link with in partnership with industry is paramount. What I do is I have industry come in, and they're the ones that advocate for my funding, and because they understand the value. That doesn't just happen overnight, though. You have to really nurture those. You have to get out with industry and make sure they understand the value that you're bringing, and you have to show them the value you're bringing. But that's who we use. In fact, when we stood up the State Board of Tech Ed, we specifically sat down and said, we don't want higher ed people on the State Board of Tech Ed. I want industry captains on there, people that need our students. And that's who I want, because that's who's going to advocate for me in the legislature.
That's excellent. Yes. Workforce boards matter. The advisory boards that we have for our CT programs really matter. They are robust. Some colleges limit those boards, maybe 5, 8 people. We went the other way. It appears that over the years they've morphed into 30 and 40 members, and they all show up, right? And then providing lunch is a little expensive, but that's many more voices. And I like that approach. And we look forward to trying to harness some of those voices for the next legislative session.
I'd like to go down a different road just for a second, because I need some advice, feedback, and it's kind of from the, I guess, somewhat from the student perspective, because you're talking about, the need to face, and I'm going to take it from a different point of view. So pre-COVID, all this kind of stuff, most of our faculty, our full-time faculty, would be in the classroom on campus 15 to 22 hours a week, doing office hours, providing service. Well, now it's like, well, I'm only teaching 2 face-to-face classes, so I don't have to be on campus as much. And because of that, there's not as much, there's not a presence on campus as much as it used to be. And so there's 2 different things. My concern is that, the faculty are not as readily available for that face-to-face. And then also, we have what we on our campus call paras, all the support people are starting to come to me and go like, hey, what the heck? I'm here 40 hours a week. Why aren't the faculty stepping up and having a presence as much as I'm still expected to be here? So that's one of the questions. But then I just want to mention out to Satine, you were talking about maybe finishing your doctorate by 55. I didn't even start my doctorate till I was 55. So a little bit slow in the uptake there. So anyway, I just any thoughts about that? It is a concern that's I'm really starting to get worried about this issue of faculty involvement, and mostly from taking care of our students' perspective.
I don't think students understand what you guys have been going through. Actually, I guarantee we don't know. Being here has been so much more educational for me. All we know is we have demands. We demand to be supported. We demand to have, and some of them are verbal demands, and some of them are demands that we feel shame that we need to ask for help, right? So we don't actually say them out loud. But by the faculty not being present at the schools, what I see is an alienation of the students. One of the things I wrote down in my notes was a couple things that I would have loved to see this semester, which is, you have to be at orientation that's mandatory. Awesome. I love being in person. You have to go in to see your advisor. Awesome. Got to go into financial aid. Awesome. I'm now in person with these people. That's it. That's the last time that we're all in person. Well, what if, we were told that there's a school counselor. I have not received one email from the school counselor. I have no idea who they are. And in psychology class last night, they're like, you know what? Just knowing that having a direct link to somebody. So if I'm stressed out, if I had an email in my inbox that said, hey, I'm the school counselor and I'm available between these hours, I would love to set up a meeting to talk with you at least once during this, the first month or whatever. And the moment that I was stressed out and I didn't want to tell my husband how stressed out I am, or I didn't want to tell my teachers because I didn't want to like ruffle any feathers, I could reach out to that person that fast. Like that would have been awesome. And it's not just on the teacher. John, his name is John. My psychology teacher's name is John. He's fabulous. He has tutors, and he doesn't like to call them tutors. He calls them peer gurus, and they're available 3 times a week. And it's just so great. You can stop in for 5 minutes, or you can stop in for the full hour. And that support on top of him every week saying, these are my hours, guys. I am a resource available to you. I am a full-time teacher. I'm excited to answer any of your questions. You can reach out to me this way, or this way. There's in his class, there's so much support. And that is really important. So having being available either face-to-face or being reached out to. Hey, I noticed that you were starting to get straight A's, but now your homework's getting a little, you're going down to B's and C's. Hey, I'm going to reach out to that person. Or maybe, John doesn't have time to do it, but he gets one of his peer gurus too. Like that's significant. Just knowing that there's somebody out there. Emotional support is super important. Like I had no idea how much homework I would have to do. Technical support, is there an IT person at the school that I can call if one of my apps isn't working, like D2L doesn't work on Firefox all of a sudden? I know I have to use Chrome, which is a small little thing, but significant. I can't access my homework on my smartphone. I can't get on DeWolf on my smartphone. And this is the big one. This is the fancy one. That kind of support, that's like these little micro barriers, right? If those little barriers were down, that face-to-face wouldn't be as important. The accessibility and knowing who to talk to about what, having multiple people to talk to about different things is so important. My advisor from the person I met in person isn't my advisor 2 weeks later, because I don't know if they left or whatever. I have no idea what happened to them. Then it's all been virtual meetings since then. Yeah.
It's a great question. Thanks, Liv. I can add to some of these themes. Thank you for sharing that. These the very kinds of concerns we hear and we imagine there are more of. We recently renegotiated the faculty contract. It's a union shop, so Nevada Faculty Alliance has a 2 or 3 year contract at a time, and we just finished it. I just learned today that it was ratified at 92%. Awesome, because that was an 8-month negotiation odyssey that is now done. What we tried to broach was that subject of presence, this very thing. And the president is adamant that more presence is better. More presence matters, more presence is helpful. Faculty view was the old view of office hours, 1 hour per 3-hour class per week, so 5 hours a week, is making me sit in a box in a building when I teach, and mostly online or high flex or whatever it might be. And that was illogical to expect a different modality for office hours than the one in which I teach. And so we recognized that during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, we had an alternative kind of approach. You could deliver your office hours in the same modality as the course that you teach. And that makes sense. And so we wanted to proceed with that going forward in the contract in the new times. I like that, the new times. Yeah, I'm going to call it that. It's always new. But then, what about office hours for those who are teaching entirely online? Maybe by nature of the program. Maybe it's a totally online program. That's the way we built it 5-10 years ago. That's okay. But don't we want some presence there? And so we started working on the other angle of service. So service very often is, your service to committees, your service to programs, serving on a tenure committee, whatever it might be. We started to encourage and bake into the contract the concept of presence matters, campus vitality is important, other employee groups depend upon us being present. And so we want to encourage as much service as possible to be done in person, right? So meetings, not just on Zoom, perhaps having things on campus, engaging students. We also changed up office hours. We went down a slightly innovative road, and you might consider this. Just office hours of I'm sitting there and there's a Zoom box and you can maybe pop into it if you want to, or you can set something up with me. We decided to take it from 5 to 3 of those hours, and the other 2 are what we call student support time. Student support time might take many forms. It might be a study session. It might be some sort of a pre-exam prep. It might be a review for the NCLEX for the nurses. It might be any of these things that faculty do. They aren't service to the institution or the profession. They are service to students. And so we wanted to capture that in a new kind of way. And there was some back and forth with the president, what might count, as that, and you go back to your constituents and you get them to read it and so forth. And she would say, no, responding to students, no emails, no Canvas messages, no, nothing like that. That's just part of the job. That's part of the instruction. I don't want to count that as student support time. That's different than what we're proposing here. Okay, fine, take that back, have some more negotiation. But we came up with the concept that if you are working to help students who need additional support and additional help, that student who missed 2 classes because they had COVID, that student who was away for whatever reason and needs that catch up, that you have to talk to them and either sometimes in some cases just reiterate the entire lesson or much of it because they want to support the student and make sure that they're keeping up with the class. We wanted to start counting that as part of that office hours, but in that form of digital or in-person student support time, preferably in person. That might be campus events. That might be recruiting events that you're doing for your program. That might be the tabling that you're doing at the big event. That might be doing extra advising. And we have a faculty advising program. And so in parallel, I'll also talk about this concept of navigators that you brought up, Jess. It's a good one. And faculty advisors, right? We had that in the previous contract, but then boom, pandemic, and then it didn't happen. So when I showed up, the president said to me, I need you to make this happen. Right? We're struggling for advisors, not enough professional advisors. The ratio is very high, right? Probably just as high as many of you have too. And the system has mandated 350 to 1, 350 to 1, students to advisor. Impossible, right? We're like 800, we think, right? And that's better than it was using some, soft monies to try to bring additional advisors aboard. So we started to leverage the faculty advisor piece and give them 25 to 30 students. It was already in the contract. And it's 3 credit release for the year, not the semester, for the year. Take it in the fall, the spring, maybe split it, whatever you want. And then we'll give you these students, and we started with lists. We might try students who are in certain categories. Didn't work. Maybe they didn't register. They moved around. Instead, we're doing that warm handoff, right? That warm transfer from advising to that advisor. Oh, you're in technical sciences. Oh, you're in theater. Oh, you're in psychology. We'll send that student to you after we've gotten them situated, not the one and done, right? Not that here's your schedule, bye-bye. But don't forget, now you have a faculty advisor and they are so-and-so. Please go see them, right? And then they reach out and they can establish some contact and so on. And we wanted that kind of embedded navigator approach in the locale of the program or adjacent to that program based upon that structure so that students would have someone to turn to. Second semester of the attempt, it's early days, but we'll keep an eye on that space and let you know how it goes.
Okay, given our time, I think I'm going to pose one more question. If we have time, we'll keep moving, but this is a good final question here is, what's a final remark in terms of an action item you want to pose to this group and challenge them to take back and maybe implement?
In a previous life, I am a game designer and a community builder, a global community. And understanding who your audience is really important. One thing that happened with COVID is people just, they got glued to their smartphones or their computers and they just watched TikTok videos and they played video games. So how do you talk to those people when they have trained themselves not to talk? Well, you gamify. And so that's my favorite thing. And D2, I'm going to talk about what I love about community college because I love so much about it. They have something that it just needs a little tweaking and some updates, but D2L is really fun. So they've managed to gamify. I don't know what D2L stands for.
Desire to learn.
Which is amazing. Right. Okay. So they gamify it. So you've got, and it only works if the teachers are educated on how to run it and how to put things on it. Because if they don't have the dates things are due and how things are open, right, the entire system shuts down and I get very discouraged. I love games. But the entire curriculum is set up, and what people like and what video games are really good at, how they draw people in, is there's little dopamine rushes of, if I do the thing, there's a check. And if I do all of the things, there's a big glowy check mark that says I did all the things. And it's so simple. And the more simple it is, the more addicting it is. But that's what people are looking for in their entertainment and their education. And edutainment came up. And earlier we were talking and I was like, I don't like edutainment because you need the depth of reading and involvement and discussion. But I like edubatement, right? So if I like this college would have been even more amazing for me to like go to had I known that they gamified the education. And it's not a lot. It's not like you're the hero in this adventure and now you're going to go from A to B to the island. No, it doesn't need to be that extreme, but those little tiny check marks. I know that if I submit a piece of homework, there's a little glowy bit. Now, if that worked on my phone, that would be amazing. And so there's all these little tiny things, like I said before, micro barriers that just need to be developed a little more. And I hear how hard funding is. I hear how hard stress and getting people to do that. And man, if there was a way that the students could help and support it and have a sense of buy-in, I think that would be really amazing. One of the things that so it's me and two other people in student government, and that's it. And so I'm kind of the project manager. One person has an idea, I'm like, awesome, here's your checklist, go and do these things. And then I've gamified it for them, which is very fun. But one of them, he came up with the idea of the League of Clubs, because we're trying to get more people to come to school. And so there's 15 different clubs. We created a form that's just asking questions about their clubs. And he's like, well, why don't we send it to whoever the president is, the student president. I was like, well, that changes. It's to your college, but the facilitator, the faculty member that is in charge of like the Latinx club or the English writing club. We sent it out, 15 of these emails. We got 5 responses. We realized that we have no idea what clubs are going on. They don't talk. We don't know any facilitators that have any information. So we're trying to build this event, and it's the League of Clubs, and it meets once a month, and there's a meeting once a month, and I love TED Talks. So it's basically like a Moth Radio Hour or TED Talk format where each club does like a 5-minute presentation, and we treat the students like adults, and we treat them like the intellectuals they're training to be. We want to gamify it, and we want to show that community and the camaraderie. And by just starting with a small group of 5 of the clubs, maybe next, and actually this is something we're building this semester, implementing it next semester with the hope that in the fall of next semester, we'll have more regular meetings and more like structure. And so this is our plan. It's so important to not just talk about it, but like show them and show them that it's worth it and that they're worth it. And so one of the things that our conversation yesterday, I came up with as a slogan, we came up with as a slogan is "You matter." And so that's going to be a big thing that I'm going to bring back to school because of all of this. And what I've heard from all of you is that the students matter and they don't know that they matter. So thank you.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing all those things. I want to have you out to talk to the faculty pretty soon. I want to fly you out there.
Absolutely.
Set up an LLC. Another thing we're trying to do is rebrand that concept. Pathways has been around a while now. We've talked about that. People understand the concept, but I think we still need that hook that speaks to students. And so grouping the curricular families together is good. And it leads a lot of places, the website, the advising, the navigators, whatever it might be. But this concept of "you matter" reminds me of a conversation we had very recently about trying to hook the student by that first landing on the website. And the question is, what do you care about? Right? And students, we find, increasingly want a cause, right? They want a cause, a thing that they support, that they believe in, that they value. What do you believe in? Do you believe in helping people in healthcare settings? Do you care about people in those? Do you care about the environment? Is it e-technology? Is it something that you love problem solving? Would you want to care for animals? And there's been a lot of these kind of career quizzes and so forth over the years, but I don't know that the theme was specifically what do you care about, as opposed to what do you want to do, or what are you good at, or what are your aptitudes, those sorts of things. I think we need to get in touch with that idea of connecting your career and your pathway. Our mission statement is about building a future that you will love. That's the mission statement. And students had a big hand in writing it. And so we shared that with our commissioners when they visited and told them it's a little unusual, but this is what students wanted. And so we think that pairs well. Still got to focus group it all over the campus, but we're hopeful that will land, or something like it will appear, because we're trying to establish a connection between what people are caring about and where they want to go with their careers.
What do I have? No, maybe one comment. I think I mentioned it when I started talking that education is absolutely part of the public workforce system. But it's not mentioned in statute. And so I know nobody likes government regulations and statute and all that. I'm not necessarily encouraging more. The WIOA, though, that establishes the public workforce system, that has ties to adult education in Title II, it is not currently authorized and being looked at. There's an opportunity there to include education in that conversation as a core required piece of what the public workforce system is. I think the benefits of that, again, I'm not advocating for more government, but the benefits of that are that it makes it clear to everybody, at least in my eyes, that it makes it clear to everybody that this is an intended partnership. And then when it gets to the governor's level, that maybe changes the conversation at the governor's level, right? Where you don't have a bunch of different partners trying to make the case about why they want to do something. Then it's also driven top down. The other thing that's interesting in that is that the pandemic, one of the things the pandemic did was change the way that governments get funded, right? So in the past, when a grant came out, it would be given to the Department of Labor to put out to their folks around something, around training or whatever, or they would do tact grants, right? They would go through education. I mean, it was very dispersed. So ARPA funds, CARE funds, ARPA funds come around and they gave it to the state and told the state to figure out who they're going to give it to and what the parameters around that are. There's an opportunity in that, I think, if you could clarify what the public workforce system was intended to be, and government maybe considered funding in a different way, that you could get block grants of funds that came to the public workforce system or the workforce development system and as an entity that then everybody could leverage, right? So then it brings in, it would be more collaborative in that it would have to be more collaborative. Everybody's got a little bit more funding. There's just some opportunities there to look at that a different way. And so any voice that you could lend or would be willing to lend to people that make decisions up to the level on the national level about how the public, what that workforce system should be and who are the partners of that and how it should be structured so that it makes sense. Funding, government generally funds by, we organize by funding stream, which is great for us, but doesn't make a damn bit of sense to anybody that's actually engaging with the systems. That's part of what, there was some of that changed a little bit in the pandemic. There's an opportunity to do more of that, but it's going to take voices from all of us to facilitate that, to make it work better, make it more flexible for all of us. So the only other thing I would say is don't give up on what you're doing. I know it's hard, man. It's been hard for a couple of years. It ain't going to get any easier, but don't give up. It's what you guys do is super valuable, and being a partner in that, I greatly appreciate having you guys as a partner.
I guess I would just wrap up when I first started in higher ed, I was, like a little orientation leader. I guess I wasn't little, I was the same height, but felt small in the chain of